Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Kerton. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. Hello, listener. It is such a pleasure to have you here with me today to talk a little bit about business, small business, and the very personal experiences that we have along the way, because I just deem it seemingly impossible to separate the intersection of personal growth and business growth out of that sentence. You just cannot separate the two. Now, I was sitting down preparing to write you this episode, and something I tend to do is, write it down and think my thoughts out and have it prepared in a way that's going to make really solid sense for you. But I'll be honest, I really struggled to get the words out this week. And I am even recording this right before, like the night before we're preparing to set it live. I'm preparing to set it live. Like, who's we? There is no way scheduling this. This is all me. But, I'm doing it the night before and I'm kind of leaving at lastminute.com. And I'm unsure if that's a sort of a self-sabotage, or maybe it's relative to the fact that everything feels quite heavy at the moment and mentally the overwhelm is high. But normally I would sit down and plan an episode out perfectly for you and bring you some insights and personal story sharing and make sure that it was succinct and you had something to take away. But today I felt like just being here with you and sharing you my thoughts and sharing with you my thoughts rather, and figuring it out a little bit as I go, because sometimes we need to do that. We need to talk it out to figure out what our thoughts are. I want to talk about working alone. And, even if you aren't a solopreneur and you have a few people on your team, you might not have that kind of relationship with them where you feel like they're really, deeply on the journey with you. So you might be in either camp, full on solopreneur, or just feeling a little bit lonely in your business. Because that's me. I work alone, and it can sometimes feel like I'm forever looking for inspiration outside of myself, because there's simply hardly anything being reflected back. And that can be a little bit of a toxic cycle at times. Social media is such a logical place to go to for inspiration and, looking for that, inspiration to keep yourself going on those days where it's really hard, or that like little pump up that you need to keep going. And we all know that it's an absolute comparison trap, especially when so many of us, myself included, might be marketing on there, which reminds you of what you need to do in terms of your own marketing, or it's just showing, highlights and things we feel really positive about sharing. And particularly when the world feels so heavy, socials can really pull you in so deeply into a space where really understanding what you're thinking and what you're feeling and what you're being pulled towards and working out your own thoughts can get really, really hard. It was the socials recently, though, that I learned something really cool about a friend that is doing something massive in business. And I'm talking like worldwide coverage, massive and super cool. And seeing this come up in my feed this day in particular, when I was feeling a little bit sort of all over the shop and maybe a little bit flat in my own world, and seeing this success from this incredible person who I not only admire, who I genuinely adore, and also just look at the energy this person has. I don't want to just name them because it's not my place to do, so I'll keep it fairly loose here. But seeing their success had me literally bouncing around the house, excited for them. I ran in to my partner who was in the other room and I was like, look at this. This is incredible. And it's something incredible that's in my field. And I was just so inspired by it. It was almost like an expander in which to say wow, there's just so much potential within this world that I'm working with. And look what this amazing human is doing. I'm so happy for them. But there's some stuff that quickly came up behind the bouncing around, behind all of the excitement and the genuine thrilledness for them. Comparison, it happened so quickly. Envy, it happened so quickly, and it caught me off guard. And it was a feeling inside my chest, like a tightness, where I could see myself reflected in the success of another person. And what I saw didn't make me feel proud. It made me feel left behind. And as someone who takes action when they're feeling this way, who, wants to like get in and fix, and sometimes push that feeling away, or can take those sorts of feelings as like triggers to do something and lean into a direction. It did drive me to want to take an action, almost to hurry up and like make some big moves. And, I sort of like felt like I was seeing my potential in another person. And it made me feel like, oh, I've got to go now. Like I've got to make massive moves now. Like this could be, me not doing the same thing, but like, being put on a stage like that, like, look at this amazing thing that's happening. And I realized how quickly I had been influenced, and how quickly and subconsciously or unconsciously I was like taking this news on board in an unhealthy way. And like to the point, I mean, it almost make it sound like I made that realization really quickly, but it wasn't quickly. I started to write down notes in my phone very, very quickly after learning this news and kind of starting to feel this way. And I was like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. And then I got to my desk the next morning and I had an email I'd already sent to myself being like, reach out to this person, throw this idea out there, do this, do that. And I had to just take a breath for a minute and be like, I'm already so often confused in the day to day about what the most important task to do is on my goals. Task focus, but also like leaving space to figure out what the right pathway is with my own business opportunities and all the ideas I have and all the people I could potentially work with over the few years if I just hang on and keep putting myself out there. I had to take a step back and really look at what I was admiring in this other person and this other person's business ventures, and why I was responding in this way. And so this is like, 24, 36 hours later, I'm sort of like, all right, geez, chill. Like you've just put everything you actually were already planning to do on hold to use this flurry of energy to make some big moves. And are they even the moves that are like important to me? These are the questions that I was asking myself. I've got a few words pinned up here on my computer, and I hesitate to share them without giving this extra context. But what they essentially are is, in the some of the self-development work that I do, they're called like an authentic code. They're just trigger words, key words that have a whole bunch of other words underneath them, but that represent me in my absolute power and my joy and the things I want to work towards, without being too cut and dry about how I'm going to get there. It's a bit of like manifestation work without the mood board, or without the like, I'm going to have a house that looks like this. But those words, one of them that really stands out the most to me is autonomy. And what autonomy means to me is you're being able to be in a business structure and a business model and do things that allow me to explore ideas and work with different people. And health is a big part of that, like being healthy mentally, physically, having healthy relationships. Success is a big one. For me, that does represent personal wealth so that I can feel safe enough to explore the ideas and the work that I want to do, to take care of myself physically in the way in which I want to invest in my physicality and in my mental health and all of those things, and also be able to invest in those I love and have money to see my family when I want to, or bring them to me when I want to, or travel when I want to. Being able to do all those things, like wealth, is really important to me. And the last one is being seen, which is the one that I struggle to share or articulate effectively, because it almost sounds a bit wanky, like, yay, look at me. But it's not meant like that. It's meant in a way that, over the years, I have often held back from my own thoughts and beliefs and putting them out there because I doubt the validity of them. I have doubted my intelligence over the years for a number of reasons, be it that I left school as early as I did, be it that I have taken an alternative route into the employments that I've had over the years, be it that I've often been promoted in my corporate roles before I was ready, and so always felt like I was on the back foot. Intelligence has been something I have doubted in myself, and so learning to put my ideas out there without worrying that they're perfect or right or, are going to be well received is a huge journey for me. So even sitting here and talking without some kind of a script to you is freaking me out. But, it's all part of that ongoing journey of learning to trust myself, to trust my thinking, to trust what I have to give and be seen for that. and be seen in a way that helps other people and supports other people, and be somebody who can empower growth in others while empowering growth in myself. All of those things, right? These are the authentic codes that I come back to in trying to figure out my own path into business. My path into business is all laddering up to podcasting. That's my consulting business. That's this business, my podcast, and its success that I want it to have. And I have to keep in mind those elements when I'm looking at it. So back to my story about my friend who has had this incredible worldwide success. If I put myself literally in their shoes and think, if that was me doing that, would I have all of those things in place in the way in which they matter to me? The autonomy to work wherever I want in the world, like work from wherever I want in the world, to be able to have the majority of my work be able to be facilitated online. That's a big part of being autonomous. And when I looked at the things that I was excited about in the other person, I was like, well, I had to reframe what I was feeling envious about in another person and put it back into my life and go, why? What is it about another person's success that makes you reflect on yourself in a negative way, to be like, I don't do that. I don't have that. What have I been doing with my life over these years? Because I don't have that big thing that's really exciting right now. And like, that's a really horrible feeling to feel that way about yourself, to feel like envious and then put it back on yourself and be like, oh, I feel like a bit of a loser seeing how well that person is doing. That's a really sad feeling. But being able to like take a beat on it for a second, like this feels like personal growth. This feels like the growth that I often chase in this gig, to be able to go, hang on a minute, let's just reframe this comparison trap I've just gotten myself in, to realize that no matter what I do in my business, I'm in a way working towards and or already achieving so many things that keep me in my authentic code. And whatever that looks like in the future is going to be driven by that. So yes, I could admire where somebody is at and look at it and go, I wish I was there. But I don't know whether or not being there, quote unquote, would actually fit the way in which I want to live and work and thrive. And by looking at that, how am I taking away from myself the potential within what I'm doing now? Because I'm so focused externally. Wow, that was a lot to get out without even like thinking. This is wild. I would not ever normally talk without something like kind of in my mind about where I was heading. So now I've said all that, I don't exactly know where to go with it, other than to say I'm so glad I slept on it and let it settle and got past that flurry of energy of seeing other people make big moves, to realize that it's perfectly okay to, look at where I'm at and where I want to be, and just let somebody else's awesome success be a quote unquote expander. My TB and my TB magnetic, to be magnetic friends will totally get what I say in this, but it's not the act of what that person is actually doing that's inspiring. It's the expanding to see how much is possible if you stay in your own path, in your own lane, working on things that matter to you. Like the opportunities will not pass us by. They just won't. And it was funny because I, again, couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to say on the podcast this week in a way in which it would be helpful to you on your own business journey. Because as I've been saying nonstop lately, my goal with this podcast, other than to obviously have some monetization success with it for myself so I can actually keep it going for you, the big fundamental driver is to help 100,000 business owners start and or stay in business. That's my big driver. So I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to say today in order to help you with that. So what has kind of gotten me to this full circle to be here talking to you like this is that envy piece being reframed. But also I had a podcast episode come out earlier this week that I only just got around to listening to today. And disclaimer, I'm only 40 minutes into an hour-long episode, but I was listening to myself back and thinking about how I was feeling, earlier in the week, struggling with some comparison trap energy and some envy energy. And I was listening to myself talking back 4 years down the line and telling a little bit of my story to this wonderful host. It's the Building Doors podcast. If you haven't checked that out, my episode is on there as the most recent one this week. But of course, you could be listening to this weeks and months from now. So find me on the feed. But I was listening to myself back and I was like, shit, things are starting to make a little bit more sense. There's my reminders going off. Sorry if that comes up in the sound, but this is the thing about doing things live. But, I'm able to get at that stage now 4 years later in the development of my business, in the listening to myself and allowing myself to go on random business tangents, like hearing myself talk back to the person who left their corporate job in 2020 with no idea why they were leaving it or where they were going, to go on a journey to do something so completely irrelevant to everything I've ever done in terms of making ceramics and selling ceramics, to come back to media, to be finding my own space within this podcasting world that I love so much. I felt like I almost admired myself from afar, because it was like being able to listen back and be like, oh, listen to how much this person is growing. And that's the journey of business, that personal growth through this vehicle of entrepreneurship is so powerful. Being able to look back and see I am nowhere near where I want to be yet. I'm nowhere near where I think my potential could be yet. If I keep trusting myself and keep looking at myself when I am putting myself down and being like, why are you doing that? And what positives can you draw from this to be able to work on it and reflect on it? I'm proud of that person. And if I have to compare myself to anybody, I want to be comparing myself to myself. I want to be inspired by other people, which is why I talk to incredible people every week on this podcast. I'm inspired by everybody else's growth. It helps me keep going. And being able to share it with you helps me keep going, because I'm giving something back and helping as best I can, whilst also helping myself. Is there anything better? But being able to sometimes use myself as the inspiration to keep going is, I think, what's going to change for me moving forward, and to try to take that on board and be inspired by what I have to offer as well. So like I said, I almost wasn't going to do any episode this week. The news cycle has been really hard, and I don't think that there is a person, or particularly a woman, I have spoken to recently that hasn't felt a bit of a heavy heart lately, and a lot of challenge of those just in life and in the social media cycle, not knowing what to do to help, and feeling a little bit lost and just really frustrated with the state of the world. That has been hard. And so I wasn't really prepared to come on and talk to you today and share insights, because sometimes you need to sit in a little bit of quiet. But that authentic code of mine, being seen and knowing that what I think and feel is relevant and helpful, even if it's only relevant and helpful even to one person, it's worth sharing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be everything. There is a value in the work that I do. There's a value in the work that you do, and sharing in an imperfect way while you're still figuring it out is also perfectly fine. If I look at my timer, which I just did on this recording device, I'm at 18 minutes. I can't believe I just talked for 18 minutes without a script. But here we go. Look at that. That's growth. I am so grateful that you tuned in to listen to me today. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it helps you. I hope you feel supported by listening to this podcast. And I hope you back yourself in business a little bit more today because of it. It is my pleasure to bring you this show. And if you love it, please do get in touch, tell me about it, and keep listening. Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Kerton. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.